Well, hello, EKN Nation. Welcome to a new edition of our face-to-face show here on the EKN YouTube channel and Facebook page. My name is Rob Howden. That is David Cole. I got it right. Awesome. It is a late night show. We don't normally do it this late because it's way past my bedtime. David, I know yours as well. But 9 o'clock here Eastern time. The reason why we're doing it, one of our guests, of course, coming in from the Central time zone. And again, getting set for what really is an Operation Grassroots edition of our face-to-face. We're talking Briggs 206. It's all about Cup Karts North America with a primary focus on the Canadian division. Gerald Caseley joining us here, that Canadian division, lining up for 3 races, 3 doubleheader weekends throughout the 2023 summer north of the border. Looking forward to seeing that growth continue with CKNA. But Greg Jasperson, the CKNA head, the co-owner, also David joining us. So all 206 tonight.
Yeah, we're going. We're pulling the ripcord, and we're gonna go. No. Yeah. We haven't talked Briggs in a long time. We feels like forever since we were at Cup Karts North America Grand Nationals. Almost 6 months. So yeah.
But I raced one like a week and a half ago, so it was good. Brett, I ran Bermuda. Not CKNA.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I ran 206.
It was out of the country. It doesn't count.
That's true. I'm an international driver now, David.
Oh, yes. And a CRG driver at that as well,
and
too.
Now, first time I've ever driven a CRG. Raced a CRG. I've tested one. I've never raced a CRG.
Beautiful.
So I'm now also the highest finisher ever on a CRG from ekartingnews.com.
That's false. That's false.
It's not false.
That's false.
Because
again, it's out of country. It doesn't count. It's Bermuda. It's a completely different
international driver, as I said.
Yeah.
Anyway. CRG Bermuda. Big shout out to David Barbosa and his wife Kelly for the hospitality out there. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so, they got a great program going over there.
Oh, dude, it was such a good time. Again, listen, it's so much part of the Briggs 206 program, Operation Grassroots. We're there. I was out there to have a good time. Everybody was out there to have a good time. Yeah, it's competition. Everybody's focused. Very similar to the CKNA Grand Nationals, David. Every time we go there, everybody's having a great time. Smiles all around. But when the green flag flies, we're still racing.
That's it. But the difference is a big crowd. You don't really have that at a lot of FourCycle races aside from Rock Island Grand Prix. So, just that's always a great time. So maybe next year I'll get to Bermuda and get to join you.
You'd love it. Well, listen, let's get started here right now. First and foremost, before we bring the guys in, let's just talk a little bit about the success story that is the Cup Karts North America program. You look back, it was the 206 Cup at one point, right? They were growing their program, and they've gone from one series to a couple ones, and they shrunk back up a little bit. Now they have the South Series, the North Series. They launched the Northeast program this year. We're going to talk to Greg Jasperson about that. They just got rolling. The Canadian division getting going with Gerald. This program for 206 racing is really starting to explode. And how about not only the Grand Nationals, but how about the Spring Nationals as well? That was a massive event this year.
We've talked about it year after year over and over, how you build karting and it's at the grassroots level. And that's exactly what, the Briggs 206 package has been able to do. Well, when you get done racing at your club, you want to move somewhere. Where do you go? You got to go regional racing. And, that's what Cup Karts North America has been able to do with all the different regions that they have now, or divisionals that they have. And of course, the Cup Karts Grand Nationals is just, it's the runoffs. It's the runoffs of karting, where you bring, people coming in from all over the United States, even from Canada and Bermuda and from other places around the world. So it's encompassed everything, because again, it doesn't, you could be out of the back of your pickup truck, or you could have the 50-foot, hauler with 20 go-karts. It doesn't matter, because everybody's racing together, the same package. And it all boils down to, again, chassis and driver.
Yeah, indeed, folks. Listen, if you're tuning in right now and you got some questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. That'll come up to us. We'll be able to bring those into the show for sure. Again, it is May the 4th here in 2023. Cup Karts. Yeah, that's it. May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. Very good. Again, Gerald Caseley and Greg Jasperson joining. Let's bring the guys in. Let's bring Gerald in. Bring them both in right now, I guess, to get things underway. Gerald, Greg, thank you so much for joining us, guys. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks.
So, Gerald, you were the guy that came down south. You've been in FourCycle racing forever. Let's put it that way. You've been around a long time. You own a track out in the east part of Canada. When I ran the Canadian Grand Nationals in 2013, so 10 years ago, you built my motor for me. Actually, we pulled it right out of the box. Let's not even say we built it. I think you went through the carburetor for me.
Yeah,
to make sure it was right.
Set the flow.
That's exactly right. Set the float.
Yeah.
And we went racing. So you've been around this for a long time. Now, you've been in Canada. You had your own track, as we know. Your son raced. Speaking of CRGs, you were a CRG guy for a lot of years. What was it? Let's just start with this. What was it when you were seeing this down south? You're like, man, I need to bring CKNA up to Canada. Let's just start with the motivation there.
Well, I always wanted something that was for the FourCycle guy, like standalone FourCycle race. And I thought about putting something together myself. And then I ventured down to Florida and I went to one of their Winter Nationals in Jacksonville and talked to Greg a little bit and stood around and watched for the weekend. And it was like the culture, man, like it was neat. It was like all FourCycle guys and you know, they were all talking and sharing stuff. And I thought, yeah, this to me, this is what FourCycle is. Out of the back of your pickup with a pop-up tent, you know, no really big teams. So yeah, I fell in love with the culture that they had, and you know, we talked a lot, and we did her last year, and we're waiting to do her again this year.
And so, Gerald, just to give people that don't know, north of the border, of course, I've raced up here many years when I first started back in the 90s, but there's never been a FourCycle only series. Now, there's a couple clubs like that. Waterloo, where I started, being one of them, a FourCycle club, but all the regional racing north of the border is 2-cycle and 4-cycle together. Like you said, your concept was like, let's do what CKNA is doing. Let's have a 2-cycle, a 4-cycle only series. And that's something, obviously, hey, it's a success story. Right, you're obviously going to start growing a lot of roots up in Canada, but you know for sure that it works based on what's happened down here in the States.
Oh, for sure. Like Charlotte this year, 386 entries, all FourCycle. Like, yeah. and out of that, 52 Canadians.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the 52 Canadians came all that way to race FourCycle, and yeah, and that's it. At your own club, you may have 3 or 4 guys to race with. You can come to CKNA. And there's 30 guys in your class. So whether you're 17th or 20th or 6th, you have somebody to race with.
Let's set the stage, folks. For those of you tuning in, here are the 3 races on the year for the Canada Division of CKNA. They're going to run in 3 Rivers, Karting Trois Rivers, on June the 9th, 10th, 11th. Then July 7th, 8th, and 9th, Lombardy Raceway, and then the iconic Goodwood Karting on August 4th, 5th, and 6th. Those are the 3 events. Let's get things underway and start just with the weekend schedule. Gerald, how do you guys are you going to run it? The weekend schedules.
Friday's practice day. You know, 5 practices at least, maybe 6 if we squeeze them in. Saturday we do qualifying or practice, qualifying, 2 heats and a final. And on Sunday, we back it up a little bit where we do practice, qualifying, 1 heat and 1 final, but the heat and the final are longer. And by doing it that way, it allows us to get the racer out of there at a decent time on Sunday and on their way home. We try to get done at 3:30 in the afternoon, get podiums over with, everybody tear down and still, you know, be at home in order to get to work on Monday morning.
That's it, right? That's the interesting thing about it. So there's so many, especially when you're in Ontario, there's so many racers that are concentrated, right? Not a lot of people are coming up down from Sudbury or whatever. Everybody, at least in Ontario, is within probably 2-3 hours of any of the racetracks. Obviously, Goodwood being so close to Toronto, the same thing. Quebec, a little bit different. Anything new for 2023 for CKNA Canada?
Well, we're doing 3 races instead of 2, so that's new. You know, it's a 6-race championship this year. The hybrid system. The other new thing for Canada is we pretty well went 99% Cup Kart rules, where we went to the red tire, you know, their track width, their rule book. The only difference for us is we have junior light here in Canada, where they have 2 sportsman divisions. We have sportsman and junior light. Yeah. So, exactly. But other than that, that's, you know, that's about the new stuff. You know, lots of talk about people coming, and we're expecting good things.
A busy night for you. Obviously, here we are. You know, we started our show at 10 o'clock. You had a Zoom call with your new staff, all your staff for this year at 8 o'clock. How did that go? How's the motivation? What's the feel like for everybody that's going to be part of the program this year?
It's really good. It's refreshing to have a new staff and all new faces, a lot of new faces that people in karting haven't seen before. The normal, you know, people that we see as race director, well, race director that we have this year, probably nobody's seen him before. He comes from a karting background. He comes from a business background. Our tech people, we have new tech people this year, but keeping with CKNA is Steve Amir, who is Greg's counterpart down there, and he's the head tech guy for CKNA. He's going to fly in. So we put together everything. We basically copied what they have down there as far as tooling and all that stuff. So then he can just fly in, do our thing, lead our tech guys. So we're trying to be more standalone. Last year we had a lot of help from them, which was great. It wasn't quite as overwhelming as it's probably going to be this year without Greg beside me going, when I'm going like, what do we do? And he's going, that's what we do. That's what we do. So, but anyway, I'm sure it'll be fine. So,
who is the race director?
Steve McNeil. He's from Halifax. His son raced go-karts for probably 8-9 years, locally at a club, divisionally and nationally. And then he went on to race legend cars. Steve ran the Legend Series. He ran Cummings in Eastern Canada for 25 years.
Wow, all right.
And now he's retired and giving back, which is, really good. And that's what we're trying to do with our group of staff is we don't pay them enough to send their kids to college, I'll tell you that. So we want to make sure that we can have some fun. And that's what we're, trying to do and run a show. So.
You mentioned so many drivers heading down to the Spring Nationals in Charlotte, that event, 50-something drivers coming from Canada. That has to bode well, that there's so many drivers so fired up to get the season underway that they decided to drive 12 hours plus, depending on where they were coming from, to get down to Charlotte. That's something we used to see at the old North American Karting Championship days back in the 90s, where Canadians would come down to that event in November. What is the feedback? I'm assuming every one of those 50-plus are going to be at the series. What are you thinking? What kind of feedback are you getting, let's say, from the drivers and let's say from the industry, from the shops and the teams as well?
Well, the drivers loved it. Like it was actually pretty neat. Kind of reached out to a bunch of them and asked them if they were interested in pitting in the NASCAR garages in Charlotte. So what we did is we rented a bunch of garages, and the whole Canadian team basically were within 8 or 10 garages.
Wow.
So that was really cool to have everybody together. We had some pizza on Saturday night. It's just it was awesome. Like 52 drivers.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It's like I'm thinking to myself, I'm looking at the registration going, like, that's great. Like, that's But I told Greg they would come. Like I said, the Canadians will come. So so it was great.
And the big feedback that we got from a lot of the Canadians at the race too was they were so thrilled to be a part of a program because it was different than what they were used to.
Yep.
And a lot of them didn't know what they were getting themselves into, but they kind of took the faith on what they'd heard from some of their other competitors. And I mean, at least I didn't obviously get to talk to everybody, but the folks that I got to talk to seemed like they had a really good time. That's truly what those races are about.
Yeah, indeed, man. You're bringing in people in. Listen, Greg, the Grand National is what it's done over the last couple of years, right? Bringing people in from every corner of the country, bringing them down from Canada. I'm assuming we're probably going to start seeing more international drivers come over and want to play as well. We've talked a lot about that. I've talked to a lot of people through my travels that you got to get to the Grand Nationals. That's the race. Like in every category is jam-packed, whether it's the kid karts, whether it's legends, whatever it may be. It's packed with drivers. Gerald, so we got all these drivers coming down to Canada. Do you have a feel for momentum-wise for numbers you might see when things get underway at Three Rivers for the first time? Is there a number you want to hit in terms of entries?
We did. I think last year for our first race, which was Trois-Rivières, I think we did 127. I'm thinking conservatively 175.
All right,
and maybe we'll top the 2. I got a gentleman contacted me from New Zealand who's coming.
Nice.
He's going to rent a CRG from CRG. Pooh, that was bad.
Got him in his head.
I just caught it in time. He's actually going to rent from PSL, but he's coming from New Zealand to race the Cup Kart.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I do know we have. I mean, I don't want to name drop, but I do know we have 1 or 2 drivers for sure coming to Goodwood. Fairly decent drivers, like really top flight guys. I I don't want to overshoot it, but I think we should be in 175 there. I think we'll be well over 200 at Goodwood.
That's amazing. And if the father of this driver who potentially could be coming up might be, watching right now or in the comments, feel free to confirm that your son's coming to drive.
For those who have never been at any of the three racetracks, is there a similarity between the three, or are they all kind of distinct in their own, or maybe two of them are very similar? Kind of talk about like the description of the racetracks themselves.
Probably two of them are somewhat similar. Trois-Rivières and similar as far as technical goes. Trois-Rivières and Goodwood are both quite technical tracks. Ottawa, on the other hand, it's more of a flowing track. Momentum track. Having said that, there's perhaps a surprise coming out of there. We can't announce anything, but there is some work being done, so you never know. It might be different when we get there. But yeah, it's we like to go to what I call FourCycle tracks. Like Goodwood to me is a FourCycle track. Trois-Rivières, it's not really draft dependent. I never liked when we used to go to the national races and you had to be a part of a team in order to qualify good in a draft where I liked where the privateer could come and he had as much chance as anybody else. So that's kind of what we like to do.
And Gerald, let's say this. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of this program is designed primarily for drivers in Canada, right? This is the CKNA Canadian Divisional, but obviously an open welcome for any drivers from the South, from the U.S. to come up and come to these events, whether it's Three Rivers or Lombardy. I'll throw the hook out there for Goodwood, literally one of the most iconic tracks in North America, right? It's been around for many, many years. You go back and look at the old IKF region 1, I think it was back in the day. Paul Tracy, Scott Goodyear, Terry Trader.
They had the IKF Grand Nationals there.
There you go, right? Yeah. And if you look at it, it's very similar to Dousman. It's very similar to South Bend as well in terms of the layout, but the topography is different. So where South Bend's higher at the top than lower, it's the other way around. But I'm telling you, folks, Goodwood, you will not be disappointed. Such a tremendous racetrack. And again, where it is, you're 20 minutes away from 20 minutes away from fantastic hotels and lots of restaurants. It's a really well-located track as well.
Yeah, and it's not far from the border.
Oh, true.
Really. And Quebec is, Trois-Rivières is not far from the border, and not really thought of that because and they showed some interest. The other thing last year the do it in the 50-inch track width. This year we're all the same, so I think that will help with a few coming across the border to race.
Yeah, we kind of missed that a little bit because of some internet connection. But yeah, the bottom line is with the rules set the same now. It's not like they're going to have to come up and change the rules, change the way their body work is, that kind of thing, right, Gerald? It's all 55 inches now. So everybody's going to be able to, whatever you run in the U.S., you're going to be able to essentially run up in Canada as well.
Exactly.
So news coming down. I got the email from you. I think we're going to post it up tomorrow. You got a new partnership going on, which is kind of interesting as well. Normally, a lot of the times we'll see connections with car teams, maybe more focused on national level racing. You got to talk a little bit about this new partnership you have with a couple of different racing organizations and teams in Canada, in Ontario, to potentially help out some of the young drivers of FourCycle racing, Briggs racing that may want to move into cars.
Yeah, we inked a deal with Sport Cup, Russ Bond, and David Klubine, Britain West. Basically, we didn't want to offer, if you win this championship, you get a ride. But we feel there's people in our paddock that's interested in going on to car racing, whether it be to go on as a career or whether it be to go on as a hobby. And I've passed on a couple of our drivers here from the Maritimes to them programs, and they work out really, really, really well. So we talked, and they're going to be our podium sponsor or presenting sponsor. They're going to bring some of their equipment to the races, talk to some of the racers, anybody that has any questions, that type of thing.
Yeah, two really good guys too. I've known both Russ and David for probably 20-something years, 25 years probably. I've known those guys for. So
At least.
yeah, they've been around a long time. Yeah.
No, and they love the sport. Like they just love it, and that's that's my deal. Is I love the sport. I do the karting side of it. So hopefully somebody. I mean, the Lucky Dog program, that's a real cool program. That's pretty affordable. And even F1600 compared to some programs are.
Yeah, great training for sure.
Yeah.
You're moving up the ranks.
Yeah.
So much exciting stuff happening right now for the Canadian division of Cup Karts North America. Obviously, we'll go back and forth and come back to Gerald on that a little bit. And yes, we got a confirmation from Robert Warren that his son Colin Warren's coming up. So let's drop the gauntlet on that.
Yeah, he's coming.
Colin Warren, folks, one of the finest FourCycle drivers in North America, is coming to Goodwood. So challenge up, boys. Man up. It's going to be a good one for sure. Let's bring Greg Jasperson. He had rushed home from work to be able to be with us here. The reason why we're having a later show is so it can be 8 o'clock start time Central. Greg, before we dive into a bunch of questions I have, talking about the North Division, the South, the Northeast, I just want to get like an overview. Every time we kind of pin you down, we kind of want to get the overview. Can you believe what this program has become over the last couple of years?
No.
It's amazing.
No, it's funny. Steve, my partner, and I always kind of joke around about it. Those of you that know him know he will never, he always is right. And he likes to rub it in my face that he always knew that it was going to do this. And I never thought it would quite get this big. And he likes to remind me that he told me from day one that if we did it right, we could get it to do what we're doing with it now. And he was spot on, because I really do think we've got a solid program. And the people that we've met and the racers that we have that follow it they're genuinely good people, and that's why it keeps growing.
I think a lot of it too is just about the fact that there was a desire to have this kind of racing for FourCycle only. Gerald mentioned it, right? How many times, at least in Canada, it's always been 2-cycle and 4-cycle. I've said this before. People ask me about my early days of the career. When I was racing in the 90s, people that were 2-cycle really respected 4-cycle. The guys would run both, right? All the DeLeos, the Chiovides, the top drivers would run Honda, and they would run Yamaha or whatever we had, Jika or whatever it was, right? That's what everybody did. They kind of did cross border. I think a lot of the times it feels sometimes like the 2-cycle guys look down on 4-cycle racing a little bit when they really need to realize it's some fantastic racing. So it was, Greg, the 4-cycle community that was really looking for this. You guys finally stepped up, put it all together, brought the infrastructure that was needed, and then once that happened, the passion for the drivers who run 4-cycle kind of filled in from you guys and just lifted you guys up.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think there was too large of a divide between the 2-cycle and the 4-cycle stuff, and everyone's got their theories for why it got there, but it did. And instead of trying to bring everybody everyone always tries to bring everybody together at one event.
Yep.
And quite frankly, in my opinion, there's just not enough time to do that. If you're going to get everybody enough track time, you can't run that many classes. So we focused on what we knew best, which was 4-cycle. And the greatest thing that I've seen now, especially in the last 2-3 years, and Grand Nationals is a great example of it, is the amount of big 2-cycle names now that are earmarking that race. I've actually had to learn a lot of these because I don't follow a lot of that stuff. I'm getting introduced to multiple time national champion 2-cycle drivers that I just because that's not my competency, that these guys are coming to race with us now. And they're running competitively, but they're not walking away from anything. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of those guys that show up, they go right to the front, but they're not winning every race. They're having to work for it. They're getting beat and they're beating other guys. And it not only does it show the strength of, the class structure with the engines and everything that are so equal. But it really shows that with all the mechanics and all the tuners and everything, that if you get everybody on an equal playing field and a level platform, you can have some really excellent racing.
Yeah, agreed. No doubt about that. Now, let's jump into the program here right now. Let's start with what do you think, David? Should we start with the Northeast program? We talked about the growth of this series, North Series.
Well,
South
let's start
series.
with the South since they wrapped up already.
Let's do that. Okay, let's start with the South Series.
Yeah.
So let me wrap up. 4 South races to start the season. First week of January was the Winter Nationals. First week of February was at Finish Line Performance Karting. April 31st to April 3rd, Monticello. And you guys just wrapped up last weekend at Carolina Motorsports Park, the South Series wrapping things up. Of course, that was kind of the second kind of program you guys rolled in. Give us your feeling on the South Series for 2023, Greg. How did things go this year?
South is still growing. We're getting a lot of new racers involved. I think we honestly, we probably didn't get the numbers that we were hoping to. Not necessarily. Some of it, honestly, I'm going to blame the weather for some of it. We've had a horrible weather year this year so far. I think of our first 7 races, we've had rain at 5 of them. And we went a long time dodging that bullet. I think we went a couple of years just outside of Grands, putting a rain tire on the track. A lot of us are weather watchers when we're going to the racetrack. So that doesn't help.
Bluebird racers, right? I want the blue skies.
But I mean, all the racers that we've talked to, they absolutely they love the tracks we're going to. Everyone was really excited that Kershaw made the cut this year. That we were able to make that fit into the schedule. Everyone loves that facility. That's a place that we hope to be able to go back to again in the future. And trying to expand that South footprint a little bit. When we started South, it kind of, we actually got a little bit of grief for it. People are calling, well, that's not a South series, that's a Florida series, because all the races were in Florida the first year. But as we are growing that base down there, for people that want to race with us, we can slowly spread the geography a little bit. And, that's why what we're trying to do is, we don't want it to be a single state series. Will there always be a race in Florida? Yeah, probably. I mean, let's face it, there's a ton of good FourCycle karters down there. And they deserve to have a race there. But, when we went to Biloxi, we were getting some people from Texas. We were getting people from, the Oklahomas even. So, I mean, we're really pulling around there. And I think that's the goal is, to put a schedule together for next year that we can at least make sure there's one race in a reasonable distance for all those people that are trying to follow that series.
And that's tough to do, man. Again, nobody deals with this. We always people talk about how big karting is in Europe, and people don't realize that you can travel from country to country, and what it takes to travel the 10 hours of some races here, or just from the bottom of Florida to the top of the Florida. You've gone through 3 countries in Europe, right? Travel is such a crazy thing when you're trying to organize a divisional. There are again same thing with Ontario, right? Ontario is so much different because there's like 4 tracks or 5 tracks within a couple of hours. Much different in the south. In the south. Greg, is there another track that you guys are looking at? Like, man, I'd really like to go there. Or are you really kind of happy with what you've got so far?
Well, now that South is more established, we're probably going to do the same thing that we did with North, and then start trying to change out 2 or 3 of the tracks every year. For a couple of reasons. First off, we want to support the local tracks. When we bring the big show to a track, sometimes that's a big event for them that helps those guys pay their bills for the year, pay their taxes. A lot of these tracks are family owned, and it's a tough business. So we want to try to support those people just as much as we want the racers to support us. Obviously, like we talked about with the geography, but the biggest thing is timing. Especially now with us having, all these races going on, we don't want to spread people too thin. So one of the big focuses for next year is going to try to build the schedule in such a way that, if people who want to race multiple divisions, if they want to do that, we encourage that, but so it's not such a stress on them or, quite frankly, our staff. I mean, some of the tech guys are going 3-4 weeks in a row without going home. They're going from track to track, and it's a strain on everybody.
That was my next point, because you did a stretch in April, went to OVRP, Motorsports Country Club Cincinnati, and then Carolina Motorsports Park. So just recently, 3-weekend stretch, not to mention all the other stuff they did before that too. And then you have another one coming up, 2 3-week stretches coming up. You got another 3 weeks in June. Well, I guess if you count Canada, some of the guys will go up there.
Some of the guys are going.
So yeah, it does it help that Steve has nothing else to do but karting? and I should say Dave Mack as well.
That's true. Dave Mack is tired.
I guess I'll put it this way. First off, this is what Steve asked for, and he knew that when we did it, and I know he's listening. So we talked at great length about this, because I, very cognizant, don't want to burn just as much as we don't want to burn the racers out, we can't burn Steve out. So,
right.
We looked at that. We knew that this was, I think the way he calls it is, this is the most ambitious karting schedule he's seen done in a long, long, long time. But we don't know if it'll work until we try it. So, and that's kind of always been our model, is if we think it's the right thing to do, we're going to do it. And if we're wrong, we'll adjust in the future. So, Yep, there's a few core guys that just did that 3-week stretch. I won't lie, I wasn't one of them. But yeah, we've got some of our staff that went to all those races, and it's going to continue to go to all those races. And when we built the schedule, they signed up for it. That's the one thing that the people that we knew we had to have at all these races, we talked to them ahead of time and said, can you make this work? Will you guys want to do this? And they signed up and they said, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, David hears me complain about my 28 race schedule all the time, except for I'm the one that said yes to going to all these races. So it's definitely my fault. So listen, we talked about Canada. We talked about North, South. We'll come back to North, but we talked about South. Already obviously had a great chat with Gerald about Canada and the growth of that program going to 3 weekends this year. You guys launched the Northeast program this year. Gerald, you went down to the event at OVRP. Greg, your thoughts? What was the motivation getting the Northeast program started? I have to believe there are lots of areas that are saying, hey, we want a CKNA divisional. I'm sure you're kind of holding back, and we'll ask you about that later, but what was the big pull for the Northeast?
There was a couple things. You're spot on. I get a couple emails a week saying, why don't you come here? Why don't you go here? And I beyond the business side of it, that we know if we do too many at some point, it's just going to stop making sense financially, where, people can only race so much. But the biggest thing for me is if we're going to do an event and we're going to put it on, we got to be able to do it right. And the biggest thing for that is staff. So finding an area that not only has racers that want us, has at least a somewhat established 206 community. Obviously the rules usually aren't there, and that's usually what we have to come in and start working with the local clubs to try to get their rules, and get all that accomplished. But the biggest key is staff. And from a personal standpoint, as you addressed earlier on, I have a full-time job, so I can't go to all these. So it was truly finding not only someone to coordinate the staff, but fill my role to a certain extent of just being the promoter, being there to not necessarily make on-track decisions, but make sure all the off-track stuff is handled. So Tony Cirillo, who's been a part of karting since the beginning of time,
yeah, no doubt,
had really been pushing on us for a couple years, and quite frankly, a somewhat similar story to Gerald. Tony was getting to the point where he was thinking about trying to do something himself, just because he truly believed that there was enough people up there that wanted something more than they had. And between working with Tony, and then well as actually Tim Hammond, the gentleman who owns OVRP, we were able to put together a staff up there that could commit to the whole schedule, which for us is important. We want consistency. And we actually, first time, it worked out really well. We actually brought that staff in for spring nationals at Charlotte. So we had the full new Northeast staff working side by side with the national staff.
That's going to be good. Yeah.
Everybody working together. And actually everybody got along really well. It's a great group of people that are running the Northeast series for us. And again, great feedback. Weather was not that good between rain and a forest fire. Never had to deal with forest fire delays before, but that was
not either.
Yep, that was a new one on me. But great racing. People loved the track. Tim did an excellent job with the facility, and it's another really cool old school FourCycle track that has a lot more history than I even knew about.
Yeah, listen, that track's been owned by a lot of great people. Has had some massively huge events. Again, a legendary track in Cuddyback, Phil. You think about drivers that have come through there, like a Sage Karam, like
say 3 IndyCar drivers: Marco Andretti, Sage Karam,
Santino Ferrucci, all coming through that. And listen, Tony Cirillo, Tim Hannon, two of the best guys you're going to find, of course, in the Northeast in terms of karting. Totally passionate about the sport. Gerald, we'll come back to you quickly on this. You were there, and I'll say this: that group is probably a core group that you want to try to see if they could get them to come up to maybe a couple of Canadian races, right? There's a good possibility of a little CanAm battle back and forth between the Northeast and Canada. They're literally 7 hours away, 6 hours away, not even that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then, I mean, that wasn't the only reason we went there. We went there to, to race and see the facility and where it's at in the foothills of the Catskills. It's like beautiful. But yes, we're hoping some of them come up. The other thing is, as Greg mentioned, we're hoping to draw from some of their staff. When we need some staff, if we need flaggers or we need Tim has offered to draw from some of his staff, so that'd be really good. And hopefully in the future we can do the same for him.
Yeah, I was going to say that obviously you talked about bringing the guys down to the Spring Nationals, Greg, and staffing. You mentioned that's going to be one of the things you're kind of worried about. You want to burn people out. Well, as you start to develop this group of people, right? Literally, you're going to be able to potentially bring people in from different divisions to be able to help out. You're developing kind of a really nice lineup of people that are going to be educated and understand the CKNA program.
Yeah, and that's one of the long-term goals that we've looked at is obviously we want to build this core staff that can go to the majority of the races. For simple cost effectiveness, we can't fly a 20-person race staff, and these events now we are taking 20-25 people even to a divisional. If you put all those people on planes or in their cars to drive, it gets very expensive. So we have to work with locals as well. But getting that core group, and then we can actually start training some of these people, because we've actually had clubs reach out to us now to ask us to help train their tech staff, help train their corner workers, just because people appreciate the way that we ran our events and they want to try to see that blend into their clubs. So I think that's one of the things that we'll see grow a little bit as we're able to put that core group of people and just get a little bit more strength in it, is that we'll be able to give back again to the clubs and help out where we can.
Yeah, people don't realize how many people it takes to put an event on. Gerald, we talked about this before we came on air. How many staff do you have for your program here for 2023?
For the one in Quebec, it's 30 plus.
Yeah, right? So, it takes a lot of people to put an event on.
People don't, somebody told me once it took 120 entries to break even, and I thought to myself, that's not, there's somebody not doing the math right. Once I did it once, I figured it out. Real quick. So
that's it.
Yeah, but no, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to find the people that, that can commit to that. Like, it's a big commitment. Like I said to you, we don't pay enough to send their kids to college. They have to have kind of a love for the sport as well, and we try to offset their expenses and stuff like that. But anybody out there that's listening that'd like to come and help, but we're always looking for people.
Well, we've done Canada, we've done the South, we've done the Northeast. Greg, let's come into your wheelhouse with the North program for 2023.
The OG series.
What's that? The OG,
the OG
series. That's right. Here's the lineup, folks. You just got things rolling, right, at MCC at Cincinnati, April 21st to the 23rd. We'll talk about the launch of the program. You're a couple of weeks away from Kart Circuit Autobahn, May the 19th to the 21st. You're heading to Badger Millwright Raceway, June 16th, 17th, and 18th. And you'll wrap it all up with a trip to Whiteland Raceway Park. And all the stuff we've seen out of Whiteland, the extension on the racetrack, all the garages going in, man, Andy O'Gara and Sarah Fisher have done so much to that racetrack. I'm so excited. I'm actually going to head down there on Tuesday to check it out myself. But that's the lineup. Let's just start out. 4 different tracks, 4 different states. How did things go at Cincinnati for the opening round of the North Series?
Again, other than the weather, it was great. And the weather definitely held back entries. It was another situation where the weather looked great up until about 10 days before, and we've talked about it before. No one seems to register for a race until about 10 days before.
Yeah.
So that kind of held back the numbers a little bit, and then the weather showed rain all 3 days for most of that time. So we had to bring in a whole bunch of extra rain tires because no one ever pre-orders their rain tires.
No.
We ended up actually having decent weather. We lost a little bit of practice day on Friday, and the track was wet to start Saturday. But other than being really, really cold, we had a great weekend of racing in. The facility's great. That was actually that was the first time I'd ever even been there. And I usually try to go to a facility before we host an event. It just didn't work out. Those guys did an awesome job. That's an awesome facility. It's up and coming.
Yeah, the Bailey family's fantastic. Yeah.
I love the fact it's family owned. That is their business. That is their livelihood. So they're putting their all into it, and it shows. And those are the kind of groups that we like to support. But no, racing was great. The people were really happy to be, for a lot of people, even though we're now 6-7 races in for the year, that was their first time on track for the year. So a lot of people that were really happy to get back to go-kart racing. And just looking forward to moving on to the next race at Autobahn.
CC?
Yeah, and looking at the schedule, nearly every racetrack has new pavement or recently new pavement or have recently remodeled. So it's kind of a unique schedule in the fact that every racetrack has a new factor to it, especially, when Badger Kart Club's, 50 years old or however old, they just recently repaved that there. So all the Northern Division drivers get to race on smooth racetracks the entire season.
That's odd for a Northern Division driver because most of our tracks are pretty wore out. And you know what? That was, I never even realized that until you just said it. But no, you are spot on there. That was not intentional, but yeah, all these tracks have had some type of recent renovation, which is great. Like putting money back into those tracks is what we want to do.
Yeah.
Greg, let's kind of pitch it at you a little bit about the expansion of some of your rules, tires, tram lines, blocking. David's got some notes down here. What have you guys done this year in terms of rule changes or evolutions on the rule set?
Well, I think a lot of it, I don't even want to call it changes. It's more clarifications. We'll start with the tram line deal. Tram lines, what we've written in there, we've been doing it that way for the last, what do you got there?
David got a
tram line penalty. I framed it. I framed it.
That is so good.
Thank you, Jason Burgess.
Oh, it's
but no, so we do our tram lines a little bit differently, and without going too far down the rabbit hole to waste time, we require people to stay in the tram lines until they cross the start finish line. So it's when the flag goes green, that's great. You can accelerate, but you got to stay in the lines until you pass the flag man. We do that for grants. You send 60, 70 go-karts into turn one at Newcastle, and you let everybody just kind of go for broke when that flag waves. We've seen it at our own events and other people's events. Those first couple corners get a little difficult. So keeping everybody in that too wide formation, it eliminates a lot of the first lap carnage, and that's ultimately why we do it. And just carrying that same practice through all the divisionals. If we feel it's safer at Grands, why wouldn't we do it everywhere? Yeah. So that's why we do it, and we've been doing it that way for quite some time. Unfortunately, at MCC and I believe at I think it was at Charlotte, people were having trouble with it. Didn't understand it, not sure why. So really, what we put into the rule book just in the last week was more just trying to clarify it and make it as simple to understand as possible.
Dave, what else you got? Anything?
Yeah, talk a little bit about the tires, because this is the first year, I think, that you said it earlier, Gerald, that you guys are using the red Vega tires. Yeah. But there's a difference. There's Canadian tires and there's US tires. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, partially. So everyone's on the same Vega BH red tire. The tire is the same no matter what. What's going to be different is depending on which importer brought the tire in from Italy. So you have 3 importers in North America. You've got TS Racing out of Florida, then 2 up in Canada, PSL, and then the guys out at Goodwood. They're all Vega distributors. There are contractually with Vega, they have certain areas they can and can't sell tires. Trying to thread the needle with getting everybody on the same rule book, but not messing up anybody else's distributor agreements and things like that. The easiest thing that we could do, they were already, for their clubs up there, the Vega tires were coming with a secondary label on them. And all that label does is designate who imported the tire. So instead of upsetting the apple cart up there for this year, what we did was we just continued on with that same deal. So the Vega red tires, depending on which one in Canada, which distributor sold it, will have a different additional logo on it. Tires in the US are just going to be the same as they've always been with no additional logo. And really all that we're doing is just making sure that the tires from the US don't go up to Canada and the ones from Canada don't come down to the US for this first year, just until we get enough tires in the pipeline, just to make sure that everybody's working out of the same batch of tires and everything to make sure consistency's there.
I like that. Gerald, what about, is it the same with practice tires? Can the guys from the U.S. come up with a set of practice tires, or do they have to kind of run a setup there, buy some used tires for people?
No. You in unscored sessions, you can run U.S. or Canadian tires in either country. There's no problem there. When it comes to scored, that's the deal. I mean, we have that one set of tires for the whole weekend. So if, for the most part, you're going to probably want a set of new tires to start anyway when you got to race 2 days.
Yeah, true enough. Yeah. Greg, let's come back to you. I know the answer to the question, but are we too far away to talk about the Grand Nationals yet? It's everybody has it. We've already booked the Airbnb.
I've already talked to people last weekend that are already tuning up for it.
Oh yeah.
Everybody, it's like you were saying earlier, it's already on people's mind that are in the 2-cycle world. Again, people are already planning for this event.
Well, and
first off, what was the total last year? What did we hit?
Oh, don't put me on the spot. I don't remember.
Well, give me come on.
I'll look it up.
406.
What's that?
406.
406, Gerald
okay.
says. David,
Was it
you can
406?
Greg, you go back to
No?
what you're saying. I apologize.
So I guess the first thing I want to say, and I don't know, I doubt any of them are listening, but thank you to the guys, to Mark Coates, on all the other guys that are now scheduling around that race, and then all these other series. There's a lot of go-kart racing going on, and we have to schedule on top of each other. Unfortunately, there's no way to get around it. But that race is now established enough that I think everybody's given it a week or two's berth because they know that so many other people want to go to it, and we appreciate that because we want that just to be the biggest, greatest event that we can, and we don't want to have to worry about stepping on other series' toes. But no, how big is it going to be? I don't know. Cole, what's the number?
385 was Grand National 6.
385. So 400 is the mark, obviously, but
Well, yeah, I mean 400 I think is
that's
I'll pretty safely say we'll get there unless
if
if we have 5 days of rain that we're looking at. But
Steve's already saying 500 probably.
Oh, I'm sure if he's watching, he'll put some comment in here and set a goal. No, I think mid 400s is very feasible. Truly, the trick is now going to become down to how do we make sure we get everybody the laps that they need without having to wait too long. Because that's one thing that we kind of got to the edge of my comfort level with even this last year was, what's the longest a person could potentially have to wait between races?
I loved it.
Because there's so many other races going on.
It was a couple hours, but I love Legends. I sat back. I'm on at 2:00. It's like, perfect.
So I mean, it's one of those things I want to be cognizant of and how we handle that, because I don't want the idea of making somebody spend potentially 11 hours out at the racetrack and only get on track twice in that time, to me, just that would rub me the wrong way as a racer. So it's really going to be managing the schedule and figuring out what we can do to minimize that with still getting as many racers in. I know I've actually had a few people that have reached out to me and really think we need to start capping classes to really be able to prevent that. I don't want to go there, but obviously that's an option that we have. Running as late in the day as possible obviously helps, but we can't really start much earlier than we do because I think at 8 a.m. at Newcastle there's usually fog and
it was a little chilly.
Yeah, it gets a little chilly. So and let's face it, we have to build the schedule prepared for it to get wet at some point, because I think we're batting 1,000 there over the last 3 or 4 years. So
I don't think it got too wet last year, did it?
Yeah, but as soon as it gets wet at all, that throws your schedule out the window.
Yeah.
So,
David, what'd you have?
I was going to say one thing to point out too. You've had an additional class too, because now you have the sportsmen split up into 2 different categories, so that adds another element to the equation. And I think we mentioned this at the end of the event last year. What about the morning classes, afternoon classes? Very similar to what we see in 2-cycle racing at some of the big events there.
So it's one of the things that we've been talking about a little bit. I've probably got 42 different versions of the schedule on my computer right now that when I can't sleep, I come down and stare at and try to think. And some of the options are that way. And I've gotten it both ways. I have some people that said, that are, I've been to Supernats, talked to plenty of people that have. I've talked to people that love that idea. I've talked to people that absolutely despise it. So, and let's face it, there's no way we're going to ever answer this problem and make everybody happy. We've got some ideas on the table. One in particular that I really am not going to talk about, because if I can't do it, I don't want to get yelled at. But we've got a couple ideas that I think will really help us with that. But the main goal, obviously, we want to put as many drivers out there as we can. Putting a 500 4-cycle drivers on the track at some point, that would definitely be a feather in the cap, so to speak.
Yeah, 100% would be. Hey, go, Dave. Sorry.
Are we looking like end of August, beginning of September, where all this is kind of come together, and you'll have everything kind of on paper and be able to tell everybody about it?
I don't do anything until 2 weeks before an event starts. No, that's actually, back to our staffing deal. That's one of the things that, with us bringing in some of these additional people that we're trying to do, the goal that we're trying to do now is to have Megan Olds, Chris Olds, some of these other people that have been with us for quite some time and that really become our key staff, getting them to take care of some of the divisional stuff, some of the day-to-day stuff, so I can start maybe shutting my email off and my phone off a couple days a week and really trying to get this stuff done early, because we've been very fortunate to host that race at Newcastle as long as we have, because Mike is able to cover up for a lot of the things that I probably overlooked in preparations. He's been a great partner for that event, and we just want to do the best we can for the racers. But yes, the plan would be to try to even get registration open for that race probably 7 to 8 weeks ahead of the event, which means registration for that will start before we're done with our divisional season. But as we've all talked about offline before, there's some other ideas and promotions and stuff that we'd like to do to try to get some other people involved. And that's going to take time to plan, and we got to work it into the schedule. So I think getting it all done early is important.
Final question I have is, we talked about expanding into Canada. Obviously, Gerald, your man up north of the border. We talked about Northeast. What's the next area for expansion for CKNA? What's the lead? What's the lead? Where are we thinking? What's going on?
I knew you'd ask that.
I want to know where the next place is.
The honest truth is, right now there is not one on the we're going to do this board.
Okay.
There are ideas. I see Texas popping in. I get that one quite a bit. There are ideas, and again, I don't think anything's off the table. The biggest key for us is to make sure we can do it right. So it's finding, I'm going to call it a strategic partner. It's finding somebody like Gerald, somebody like Tony and Tim, because it really, to do right by the racers, it takes somebody that can give it a lot of attention. And if I was trying to manage, even take Canada out of the equation, if I was just trying to manage our 3 divisions, there's no way we'd be able to do it and not have a ton of people upset with us. We wouldn't be able to do the racers justice. So
sometimes growth is not the right thing to do at a time, right? Yeah. You better to fine tune what you have, perfect what you have, because you have such a good program right now. Yeah, you may want to. The thought of expansion is still there, but maybe if you just focus on what you've got, you can continue to fine tune that before you expand some more.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on there, because we've got somebody in each division now to run it, and really, we got Brett in the South. We've got Gerald up north, in Canada, Northeast. We've got Tim and Tony. So, that's really the model, is to get, and I want to be the support staff for those guys, and really to help them build their divisions, to make them as strong as possible. And you're absolutely right. If it takes a year for us to really do that before we focus on something else, that's completely fine by me. If an opportunity pops up, I'm an opportunist. If the tea leaves line up and it's the right thing to do, we'll look at it. But right now, we just really want to focus on what we've got and make it the best program that we can.
Makes sense. Let's go back real quick here, Gerald. I got a question here from Robert Kraut. So,
I got it right there.
If Americans go, meaning coming up to the CKNA Canada Series, we have to buy Canadian tires.
You don't have to buy them to practice on, but for race tires, if you want to call it Canadian tires, you have to buy VH Reds and that have the Canadian logo on them, whether it be from PSL or whatever. That doesn't have a lot to do with us. That's pretty well has to do with Vega and the deal they have with their distributors. That's and like I said, there's a couple of things. When it first came out, I wasn't really a big fan. And then when I was in Florida this winter and I seen some of the tire stuff that was going on, I know for a fact that our batches of tires from PSL and from Goodwood were made in the same week. So they're the same batch of tires.
Okay.
And what I don't want to see is what I seen kind of in Florida in a couple series where, well, this tire is faster than this tire, or this tire, all of a sudden the U.S. tire is better than the Canadian tire. The Canadian tire, when you go to any event that you're going to run 2 days, you're going to buy a set of tires most of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So to buy, and the other thing, when you buy from the event, you're helping that event pay the bills.
Hey, and US guys, don't worry, your dollar goes a long way up in Canada.
Oh yes, a dollar.
It goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, I give you $1.36 for every dollar you give me.
There you go. Trust me, folks. When you come north of the border, you'll be happy. Let me just throw a couple of quick things up here. Emily DeMaster says the New York staff was the best. She raced down there. Robert Fink had a great time with your series at OVRP. I love that. Here's a great one, too, from Graham Henkel. Greg and Gerald are true leaders and innovators in the sport, and the fantastic CKNA series is awesome. Is an awesome, welcoming grassroots series. Adding Gerald on the Canadian side was brilliant. Kudos. I just like to throw a couple of those up there. Guys, you're doing great work for the sport for sure. Gerald, again, you got to be excited. Again, you saw what you liked. you've been in the FourCycle part of the sport for many, many years. You're a track owner, as we said. You've been an engine builder. You've been a team owner. To be able to get into this side, the promoting side with CKNA, you saw what you liked. I have a feeling you're going to have a lot of fun this year seeing this thing grow.
Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to this year. I mean, you look, it's overwhelming. You're humbled. The announcer, Dave Mack. Mm-hmm. I used to always hear him say, and he does say some things. He says, I'm honored to do this, to be a part of this. And I always thought to myself, is he but I understand now what he means. It is an honor, and I feel honored that I can do this. And we'll all go out and have fun and race.
Greg, let's wrap with that. The key thing is you kind of went around the horn and you talked about some of the people. You got Brett Spouty down in the South. The Spouty name has been synonymous with karting for 60 years, probably. David, am I right? Probably yes. 60 years. You got Tim Hannon and Tony Cirillo. Tony's been around for a couple of decades, probably 3 decades, calling races. You got Tim Hannon, one of the finest gentlemen in the sport, a track owner as well. You got Gerald again. I'll vouch for Gerald any day. You got to be happy with the people that you have lined up because you have associated yourself with some of the finest people that we have in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that is the key to making this work is, finding the right people. I mean, this is a customer service business. I mean, truly, that's what it comes down to is you got to treat people with respect. You got to make sure they have a good time and make sure they get what they paid for. And having people that understand putting the customers first is a big thing. And everybody we've been able to line ourselves up with so far, we're very fortunate that they've taken the journey with us because it's what it takes to make it work.
Let's line up. Let's wrap it up with this. It wouldn't be a CKNA event without Dave McIntyre, right?
So the running joke with all of our regular national staff is that if Dave loves to run around worrying that if he says something, because when we were really small and I was race directing from the tower next to Dave Mack, anytime he'd start to say something he wasn't supposed to, I'd just smack him or shut his mic off.
Can I do that with Rob?
That doesn't happen anymore. Now Dave's up in the tower. I'm running around, usually working on some internet connection or something like that. So Dave's kind of on his own. So he's always worried he's going to get fired because he said so. So to try to make him feel better now, I hope, all the staff now says, well, don't worry, Dave. If he fires you, we're all quitting.
That's
so
nice.
I guess everybody can rest assured Dave Mack's probably not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
I love it. He's retired now. This is what he's got. He's the CKNA voice now. That's what it is, right? It's amazing.
He's offered to drive the 18-wheeler if we ever buy one. So
there you go. Line it up. Line it up. I love it. Greg, final words, man. Great. First of all, thank you so much for joining us, man. We really appreciate it. Always a pleasure to talk to you. I've known you for a couple of decades and just really, really pleased with how everything's gone for you guys. Proud of what you guys have put together. Any final words you want to say to the karting community right now?
Big thing for me, when we all go to the track, we're all there for the same reason, it's to have a good time. And that's something I think we go out of our way to try to foster, and we love it when the racing families come up and try to do the same thing. And that's again, we all want to win. We all want to run up front, but unfortunately we can't all win every race. But making sure we are all having fun, making good memories, having, memories with our families is really the big key thing to this. So, I think we've done a good job at that. I think our racers have done a great job at that. And I just want to continue that mentality. If we can turn every race into a 300-400 kart event, that's great. That's fine. But ultimately we have to make sure that for the good of the sport and for us all having a good time together, that's the main focus, is that we're having fun while we're doing it.
That's it. 100%. Dave and I keep saying that day in and day out. Again, folks, the Canada Division starting off that karting Trois Rivières on June 9th, 10th, and 11th. Come on up. And of course, if you're in Canada, make sure you're there. It's going to be a badass race to get things underway for the Canada Division of CKNA. July 7th, 8th, and 9th, Lombardy Raceway in Ottawa, and then the legendary Goodwood in Scoville, Ontario. Just, is it northeast or northwest of Toronto, Gerald?
Northeast.
Northeast of Toronto. August 4th, 5th, and 6th. Again, an iconic racetrack. Gerald, let's wrap up with you and CKNA Canada. Any final words? You're pretty excited about getting this thing underway?
Yeah, just real excited. Thank everybody for attending last year, and looking forward to this year. And like I always said in this deal, and I say at a lot of drivers' meeting, is this is my dream, and all them guys are making my dream come true. And I'm having a lot of fun. So
that's awesome, Gerald.
Yes.
Fantastic, folks. As we know, Operation Grassroots Briggs 206 has been the platform that really has exploded the bottom of the pyramid of racing. And I think what we're seeing at the CKNA Grand Nationals every year, and of course we'll see this year in Canada as well, is that people that run that FourCycle program love to go racing. The racing is unbelievably close. We're seeing more drivers from two-cycle wanting to come into play because they're missing out the boat, right? They're missing something that's absolutely amazing. So again, we wish everybody the best of luck in CKNA and any of the divisions throughout the 2023 season. And we hope to see everybody at the Grand Nationals, of course, at Newcastle at the end of September, start of October. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. On behalf of Greg, Gerald, and David Cole, my name's Rob Howden. Bye for now.